The information found in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hi, and welcome to the Women in Depth podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Lourdes Viado. Join me as we explore the inner lives of women, their struggles, fears, hopes, and dreams. We'll go beneath the surface and take a deeper look at what is hidden, unknown, uncertain, and uncomfortable. Melissa Thompson is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a private practice in New York City, working primarily with women in their 20s and 30s, pregnant women, and new moms. As a holistic and depth-oriented therapist, her role is to support her clients in finding wholeness, mind, body, and spirit, creating more joy, ease, and healthy relationships. Melissa helps her clients remember their empowered, authentic voice and tap back into their true selves. She is the host of the Honest Mamas podcast and co-founded Honest Mamas to help support women emotionally and spiritually on the motherhood journey. Hi, Melissa, and welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
I'm really looking forward to our conversation because I think that motherhood is a experience that women, if they're completely being honest, all struggle with. I don't care where you live, your socioeconomic status, whether you stay at home, you work, or a mix of both. Single moms, moms who are not single moms. Motherhood is hard.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
It is so hard.
I mean, I honestly, I've done a lot of, I guess people would describe them as challenging things in my life, but I have to say that nothing has quite kicked my butt like motherhood has.
And you know what's so interesting is that so many people can try and explain that to you when you don't have children.
Right.
About, oh my gosh, it's so challenging, but it's also the biggest love that you've ever had. And it's overwhelming, but it's also incredibly heart-opening and amazing. And you'll learn so much. And I always thought okay, yeah, I'm sure it's going to be hard, like sleep deprivation, all of that. And yeah, I hope I love my kid. But after having now 2 children, there is no way anyone could have really, really explained it to me in a way that really would have made sense. It's just way beyond amazing and also very, very challenging.
Yeah, I agree with you with that. I think I was in that same place when I would hear people talk about motherhood. I thought I got it, but I had no idea. I had no idea. Yeah. Melissa, how did you get drawn into working with women, specifically moms, new moms and pregnant women?
Well, I love this question because it does kind of take me back to kind of why myself and 2 co-founders started Honest Mamas, which was born out of this desire to connect more deeply with other women on this journey of motherhood. Because what happened was 2 colleagues of mine, both therapists, myself, we were all very, very close friends. We'd gone through grad school together. We got married around the same time. And then we sort of all kind of got pregnant around the same time. And we would call each other, we were and are very, very close friends. And we would call each other and say, oh my gosh, this is what's happening. I'm pregnant. This person just said this thing to me. I want to rip their face off, or I want to cry and run into a hole, not get out of bed, whatever it is. And, as that developed from pregnancy to giving birth and all of that, it just felt to us, to myself and to my 2 co-founders, that there was really this gap in the industry of birth that really felt like it was missing the emotional and spiritual component for women. So we would each go to our birth class and we would learn so much about preparing for the hospital or a home birth or what a midwife is or what a doula does. But no one along our journey and our experience ever really said to us, so much is going to change, not only with your body, not only with your life that you can see, but also with how you feel about things, your connection to spirit, your connection to yourself. And so there was that piece that really intrigued us. Plus, so many women in our lives and what we saw in movies and TV shows, it really wasn't the truth. And that's what we were really hungry for, was what is the real experience when we're having a hard day? How do we really connect with other moms on that level and really make it matter and really be able to move through some of the really challenging parts?
And I think when you speak about the gap in, what is available to women, to moms in this birth process, I feel that that gap of the emotional and spiritual is also a huge factor into why so many women struggle with postpartum depression and other perinatal mood disorders, because that is this gap that you're talking about.
Yes. And that is exactly one of the main points for myself that felt very important. Like, if we can give women a little bit of a leg up or a little bit more support before they start even getting pregnant, or while they're pregnant, or when days are new, hopefully they find us or get, this support before having the baby. But even after that, I think there would be much less of the mood disorders that come after having birth, because you would feel more grounded, you would feel more prepared emotionally, you would feel more connected, you would know yourself better.
So it's almost like there's this emotional, spiritual prep that could really be beneficial to the mom and to her baby and to her family if she had this information in place before and during this critical time.
Yes, that's certainly what we believe. That's certainly what we've heard from our clients, from our friends, from our colleagues, and that certainly was our experience.
And so now I'm struggling because I want to go two directions. Okay.
Okay.
But maybe we can do both. So I guess let's start with one of the things that you have focused on, and I think is so important, is on helping women to, and I love the words you used here, remember their empowered, authentic voice, because I like that there's this idea that something's been forgotten. And I love, the word remember is to put something back together. It's to reconnect. And so I love that you chose that word. And so maybe if you can share, what is the significance of her voice within this experience of pregnancy and birth? Like, why, what's the connection between those two?
Absolutely. That's a great question. I work with a lot of couples as well. And so a lot of women that come in, also in couples, whether you're in your couple, you're in your relationship, or even if you're a single mom, remembering your empowered, authentic voice is so important throughout the lifespan. Like, it's not just now in this moment becoming a mother. It's your child grows, your child ages. To me, it's a fundamental learning that is so imperative in our process. And what it looks like to me is that we are shifting and we do grow and we do evolve. And so at moments, especially around motherhood, to me, it almost feels like we're projected and it's like our inner being is thrown out into the world. And all of a sudden, there is no referencing back to ourselves, to our, kind of core who we are. There's no one saying to us, well, how do you feel about that? Or what do you want? It's more, it ranges on the more superficial, such as, oh my gosh, this crib and this outfit, which are great and super fun to talk about. But that's where in our society, we focus a lot of our attention, or we start planning, doing the birth plan. And trust me, I'm the first to say, my first child, I had a birth plan that was locked and sealed and typewritten, and it was solid, right? And I was so proud of it. And I went to the nurse and I thought, okay, she's either going to hate me or she's going to love me. I don't know. But, so much of my energy and my time was spent around creating the birth plan. And so that leads me into another element of this, which is around our care providers. And unfortunately, in my first experience of giving birth, I felt that I completely lost my voice. I felt completely out of control. I felt belittled at times. I felt not respected at times. And to me, this is where the importance of kind of knowing ourselves and, of course, being compassionate and understanding that everybody's got to do their job in the room and there are elements in place for our protection. But I hear, and my experience was that so many mothers lose their voice around this time. I think part of it is because we're not asked from our society, well, how do you feel about that, mom? You've been carrying this baby for close to 9 months now. Like, how do you feel about that? That's one element. But also, no one else is helping the mom really discover and learn and grow that voice inside of her either.
Yeah, I remember having a conversation with Dr. Kat Kayeni of
Oh, yes, I love her.
Yeah, on Mom in Mind. And we spoke about this also, that in this losing her voice, there isn't a ritual or a rite of passage or anything in place where another woman guides a woman through this process. I mean, yes, you have your mothers and your sisters and your girlfriends, but like you said, often, I think most of the time that gets focused on what color will the nursery be? Are you going to breastfeed or do bottles? But you don't get into this is how it's going to feel. This is what you might struggle with. This is a time when you might be afraid to say what you want,
Mm-hmm.
to kind of give almost like when you're going on a tour in a foreign country and you tell someone when you get there and you land, this is what's going to happen. And then you're going to go here and this is what it's going to feel like.
Again, it goes back to no one really being able to fully prepare you. And also the priority I think we pay in our lives to not kind of go inside and to learn these places within ourselves. And then we get thrown into the mix of motherhood and, it's sink or swim time. And we struggle a lot of the times, myself included.
And I think too that there's an element of, you're already going through the physical aspects of all of this. So you're exhausted, you're tired, you're in pain. And then I think because you have never been down this road before or you're doubting yourself, there's a fear of even asking questions or expressing what's going on in your mind. And I think then the shame settles in and then forget it.
Yes. And I think as women, I don't know about anyone else listening or you, but it's almost like we don't want to be a burden. We don't want to be rude. We want to be nice. And usually, so I think when we're fighting up against all those elements that feel so out of our control, and maybe we're medicated or not medicated, maybe we're freaked out, maybe, my experience was I had to give birth in a hospital, and my experience was like their house, their rules. And I really felt very little in that situation the first go around. I rectified that the second go around, but the first go around, I felt very disempowered and very small.
Yeah. And I think too that for many women, we all want to put our children first. I mean, that's the most important thing. And I think, at least in my experience with what I went through and with the women I work with, there's this sense of what I'm going through or what I'm wondering or what I'm feeling. That's not important. It's about the baby. And you kind of do that prioritizing. And so you feel like you're doing the good mother type thing by putting your concerns or struggle to the side.
Right. And that carries over into actually having the baby. I mean, that starts, I think, when the baby's inside. And then after you have the baby, I know for myself, it was sort of like, okay, I was running on so many fumes, anxiety. And I had, I wasn't able to eat that much because I was so anxious the first time around. And I was sad. And I was completely out of my league and overwhelmed. I had never changed a diaper in my life. And I had questioned, do I really want children? Is this something I want? And so thrown in, game time, here we go. Thank God I have a loving and supportive husband who knows how to change a diaper.
Right.
And really has way less anxiety than me. Granted, of course, I was coming off of lots of medicine and I'd had to have an emergency C-section. There were all these elements that played into it. But I was terrified. I was terrified that either I would screw something up or the baby something bad would terrible would happen. I wouldn't be able to feed him. I was having breastfeeding issues. It was a hot mess. And I'm a therapist.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I think too, with motherhood, there's this idea that you should know this. Somehow you come pre-wired to be a mother and to know how to mother. And so I think that's another piece of it that, why don't I know how to do this? Why am I struggling with this? This is what my body's supposed to do. I thought mothering was very instinctual,
Mm-hmm.
because people also tell you, oh, you'll know what to do.
And yeah, okay.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. So I think that's part of it also and then again with that, when you realize You don't know what to do. You don't know what's going on. You're not having really warm, fuzzy mother feelings at this point. Then there's a shame. Like, okay, what's wrong with me?
And that brings it full circle to what we were speaking of earlier. I remember going back to my birth class the first time, and I loved the ladies in my birth class. They were lovely. But there were a couple of them that I felt like, wow, like they've lost all their baby weight, and I feel like a big old hippo. And wow, like, oh, they pump too much breast milk. Like, wow, I don't even have enough. And I understand too much. Like, you have issues with that too. But the comparison game was intense, and the guilt and the shame that I felt, it almost felt to me for the first baby like I couldn't even be around certain people because I was so triggered.
Yeah.
And I knew I was hormonal and all of that. But again, it goes back to how real are we really going to be with other mothers? Because it is such a disservice when we pretend that everything is okay.
I have to share something with you because it's just, you brought this to mind, and I had difficulty with my milk production. There wasn't enough milk. And so I went to our local women's center to take a course, or to meet with a consultant to help me with this. So I made the appointment, and I went, and I got there, and just to do all of that when you've just had a baby is a huge thing.
Yes.
And I get there, and the lady just looks at me and she says, "Where's your baby?" And I said, "At home." And she looked at me and she said, "Well, if you're going to learn how to breastfeed, you need to have your baby here." And I just felt like, oh my, and she just looked at me like, hello,
Right.
this is like basic,
Right.
and I felt about this big. I felt so foolish and stupid. I was angry at myself. I was angry at the way that the women at the front desk, like they just had this look like, oh my gosh, she didn't bring her baby. And I just left there and I felt horrible. I remember I just went in the car and I cried, and just what you're describing, that really brought that memory to the surface for me, and what I was experiencing with that.
Yeah. And, I think we forget, like, I have a good friend who's pregnant now, and just the comments that people say to her, that she shares it with me. And I'm like, oh my gosh, someone really said that to you? And I think we just forget that, women were feeling so much. And I don't know about you, but when I was pregnant, I felt so open, like in my spiritual self, which may sound weird to some people if they're not maybe connected in that way or don't understand. But to me, I felt so connected. My intuition was really high. My body felt really open. All the hormones were moving and opening things up for birth. I felt very, very vulnerable in that way. And so when people said things to me, even if it was like a comment or a look or something like that, it really affected me. Like, I think I would have done the same thing, gotten in the car and cried and been like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm such an idiot.
So I just, as we've been talking about all these different factors, it's not a surprise that a woman forgets her voice.
Yes.
It's not a surprise at all. It makes perfect sense. So in this process in the work that you do, how does a woman begin to remember her authentic voice? How do you bring that back?
It's a great question. I think for everybody, it's a little bit different, but there's some elements that ring true for everybody. And number one, there has to be an openness to want to know yourself. There has to be a willingness to go inside. Some people are very afraid of that. And I know at times in my life, certain times when I've gone on like a meditation retreat where it's silent and I'm like, why did I sign up for this? Like, I'm in my own personal hell. Like, I don't want to listen to myself. I don't want to think about my own thoughts. Like, get me out of here. So, your first step to me feels like you really have to be open enough to be curious about what's in there and face it a little bit. And maybe it's not all at one time, but maybe it's moments, and then you go and do something else, or you put on a funny movie, or you have a chat with a friend. But number one to me feels like the openness. The second piece is really getting clear about how you feel. I work with a lot of clients who, through therapy, have finally been able to say, like, I felt really hurt by that, or I felt really angry by that. And really learning this kind of inner landscape or this inner world where maybe certain emotions were allowed in your family growing up, maybe certain emotions weren't. Stereotypically thinking and working with my clients, anger is not an emotion as women that we're really encouraged to feel a lot of the time. So sometimes women don't even know that they're angry. So, the first is being open to going inside. The second would be really getting clear about how you actually feel. And to do that, that could be a moment to moment checking in with yourself, like really pausing, stopping, maybe, if you're with people, going to the bathroom, looking yourself in the mirror, like just taking a moment to slow down to really see how you are and get quiet. That to me feels so important. And then, the other step is also starting therapy, starting the journey of going to talk to somebody and really having somebody reflect back and process with you how you're feeling. That is also a really good avenue.
Yeah, I think that especially with women feeling isolated and disconnected and the shame, to be able to sit in a safe space with another who is there to, to mirror and to hold and to reflect is very powerful.
It's so profound. It is so profound what somebody can do for us if they're just quiet and loving and compassionate and just, like you said, hold space. It's really, really beautiful and non-judgmental space I'm talking about. Not the woman, not the lactation woman and the front desk people.
And so what about for the woman who wants to do this work and is open to it, but she just doesn't have the literal physical support and resources in the sense of, she may be a single mom. She may be limited as far as her time availability because of just the way her life is structured, or someone who's just kind of trying to deal with the basic elements of sleep, eating, having someone who has maybe the primary responsibility of the physical childcare. And so she's just, she can't even create or fight for that space to do some work for herself.
I think she probably needs it a lot.
Yeah.
To find this empowered, authentic voice. The first thing that comes to mind, my path, and every path is different, but my path has really been through mindfulness and meditation. And that to me has been so instrumental in me learning about myself. I'm a fast mover. I live in New York City now. We go fast, we talk fast, we work hard. I mean, I do. A lot of us do. And, we're constantly moving. And I just thought this was the way of life. And once I really started to slow down and really, for me, I went online, I got some books out. There's some amazing meditation practitioners that really make it available to like the lay person that has never done a meditation in their life. And I would go online and I would download some quick meditations, even if it's 5 minutes, just to get quiet and practice. That was huge for me. The second piece that comes up for the mom that doesn't really have access to resources is there somebody in your life or a community that you feel comfortable to be yourself? Whether it's one person, a neighbor, a friend, a mom, a sister, another mom friend, even just one person that you can start practicing letting them know how you feel, letting them know in a real way how you're actually doing, sharing perhaps some of the hard moments to, maybe navigate through some of the feelings of aloneness and shame that you feel. There is something so magical that happens when you're talking to a supportive person in your life and they say, oh yeah, that was me yesterday. Like, been there, done that, kids screaming on the floor, wanted to die in a pile or go under a rock somewhere. And you go, oh my gosh, okay, so I'm not so terrible, right? Like, okay, the connection makes us feel so much less alone and also allows us to be real with each other. And that is healing and transformative.
Yeah. Just in that conversation or that interaction with this other person, for a moment, they hold that burden with you.
Yes.
And it does transform it. So even though maybe things haven't really changed, you're different because you've had that connection with that other person.
Which is why I love therapy. I mean, they've done studies to show that, neural pathways can be changed in the relationship between therapist and client. It's amazing, amazing, deep, powerful work. That's my side note. That's my little ploy for therapy.
No, I agree with you. I guess we're biased because we're both therapists, but I have to say though, I have worked with individuals where you were that one, that there was nobody else, and how it changed things for them, how they were able to navigate that and leave and go back into that and cope. And yeah, it's very powerful.
And I think what's so confusing sometimes, like when I go out in my life and we're talking about kind of holding space and, sometimes I think I bump up against that with my partner who's not a therapist and, he'll run in to fix something and I'll say, I have this issue and he'll say, okay, this is how I fix it. And I'll say, honey, I love you, but like, I don't want you to fix it right now. Can you just be quiet and like, just hold space for me? And it's so simple, yet it is so hard in our society to actually do for one another.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, we don't equate being with someone just in that emotional connection where I'm here, I see you, I hear you, and I accept you. There's something in that moment that is very helpful, more helpful than anything that could actually be done that's concrete, like some action.
Yes. And I'm telling you, most of the couples I see are yearning for one of their partners or for both of them to feel really heard and really seen. And it's so simple. And yet it is some of the hardest things to do, especially in the moments of trigger or activation where you want to just scream and yell.
Yeah, because, actually with the things you're describing, Melissa, as far as how to remember, one's empowered, authentic voice, you mentioned openness, clarity about how you feel. You mentioned therapy, but that also is connecting with another human being who you feel safe with,
Yes, totally.
And then the mindfulness, which is, that's connected to that clarity about how you feel because that's that attentiveness to your inner states and what's happening. And when you're being mindful, you are slowing down just by the nature of being mindful. So,
yes,
and then the meditation too, which I think, for those of us who live very active, busy lives and who, you equate meditation with sitting on a mountaintop, with silence around you. You just think, right, how am I supposed to have that mountaintop moment? Have you looked at my life? Not the realization that, this could be after you leave your baby's room, you finally put them to bed and you just take 2 to 3 minutes to breathe and to empty your mind. Or, this could be, I've done this at stoplights or being stuck in traffic.
I love that.
I'm going to, yeah.
I love that. There were 2 thoughts. Sorry to jump in.
No, you're
fine.
I got excited. That's okay. Go ahead.
There were 2 thoughts I had. The first was a memory of when my son got his big boy bed, and instead of the crib, he advanced to a big boy bed. And every 3 minutes, he would jump out of the bed, come running out of the room, come running down the hall, and I wanted to scream. It was so late, he needed to go to sleep. And so we had done books, we had done the whole routine. And so what I decided to do was I came into the room with him. He was in the bed. The lights were all off. The white noise was going. And I thought, wow, this is actually really relaxing. So I would sit in front of the door, in whatever way was comfortable for me at the time. And I would close my eyes and I would breathe. And I would just take those moments. And sometimes my son would come up and, kind of try to get my attention. And I would just stay inside. And other times he would just relax in the bed while I was there in the room. But like those were my moments that I could grab when I could.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, again, I love that, these are things that, again, you may not have the time resources or the, financial resources or, you may just really feel like you're just against the wall. But there are these moments that you can find. That are, and they might be just moments, 2 minutes here, 3 minutes there, but they're there throughout the day.
Yes. And it's interesting. There's someone, I did a podcast with a woman, Angela Gia Kim, last week who runs Savor Beauty, which is actually they have a couple spas in New York City and also does a women's empowerment community for entrepreneurs. And she talked about, I love this thing that she said. That's really, it's been about a week or 2 since I interviewed her and it's still sticking with me. She talked about upgrading moments. So yeah, instead of taking a shower and like taking that moment to take a shower, maybe you light a candle or maybe you put some music on or maybe you use some aromatherapy. This can this can also be your moment around mindfulness. Like, to really slow down and you have just a moment because we're all busy. And how do you upgrade that moment? I thought that was really pivotal. I thought it was really great.
Oh my gosh, I have to share this with you because I just realized I upgraded a moment and didn't know that that's what I did. Okay. But my son can have a tendency to drag out the bath because he knows what's after the bath is bedtime. And so one of the things I have this, those Himalayan salt lamps, they have that soft orange glow that's kind of very soothing. So I don't know why, but it was in the bathroom. I must have been cleaning or something. And so I was stressed and wanting him to go to bed. So I turned off the lights and turned on the salt lamp. And so he's in the tub in his warm water, and there's very nice ambient glow in the bathroom. And he said, "Mommy, this is nice." And I said, "It is, isn't it?"
You said, "I upgraded our moment."
And so now that's something that we don't do it all the time, but there are times when, we'll turn that on and dim the lights in there. And, I'll just sit there quietly with him and he'll play in the water. And it's very soothing. So I guess that's an upgraded bath time.
Yes. Sounds amazing. Yeah. Amazing.
So, Melissa, in your work with women and helping them remember their empowered, authentic voice, and when they do the work and they get to this place where they are able to know what they're feeling, express what they're feeling, ask for what they need, what has surprised you most about the women you've worked with?
That's a great question. What surprised me most is how much bravery they have and courage. Whether it's to stand up to a care provider, whether it's to use their voice with their husband, even though they've gone over this certain thing a million times and their partner's saying, "Oh my gosh, we have to talk about this again. Like, you're getting so annoying." And they'll come back to the table and they'll learn through therapy, through mindfulness, through our work around communication, which is huge. I do a lot of that. They really learn how to kind of process in a different way and communicate in a different way. And the bravery and the courageousness to me is always so striking, that there is such a need and such a desire to be seen and to feel seen in relationship with either partner or family member. And if there is some opportunity there, it's not like you're going to try and do this with somebody that just reams you out and is toxic. You don't want to do that. But if it's someone that you feel like there's potential and hope there, like your partner, hopefully, or someone else in your life, to me, it's been really astounding and beautiful to see how many women are brave and courageous enough to try these new techniques to really feel seen and supported.
Yeah, I love that. The courageousness and the strength. And really, it's about it's like the right expression or appropriate expression of assertiveness and protection of one's boundaries, and being willing to fight for, what matters most to you and what's most important for you.
Yes. And, to me, we talk a lot. I use this phrase a lot, and it never seems to, in my mind, it always seems to land well, because I think my therapist years and years ago used it with me. And so it really makes sense to me. But sometimes I tell my clients and they're like, "Yeah, but not exactly like that." So I'll share it with you. I often say, that phrase, "pearls to swine"?
Yeah.
I often see my clients' vulnerability and the courageousness and the communication and the empowered, authentic voice that they're learning to use as their pearls. Like, these are really precious, really valuable pieces of themselves. And so you really have to look at who you're giving that material to. And if it's swine, if they're pigs lying around in the dirt, you're not really you don't really want to give that to them. So you really got to make sure that the person that you are kind of practicing this with is somebody that, can maybe tolerate this a little bit. Or if you're thinking this is the last time and they're a toxic person and they're moving out of my life anyway, then that solves that problem too. But just to be very mindful about who you're giving these pearls to.
Yeah, because these pearls are precious treasure.
Yes.
And so
and they're well-earned treasure.
I like that. It's something that needs to be earned. It's just not something that's given.
Yes. Agreed.
So, Melissa, if we have a mom or several moms who are listening and they are really struggling, what are some words of wisdom that you have to offer them?
Oh, you've got so many good questions. It takes me back to, I've alluded to it a couple times in this podcast, this chat with you today, but it takes me back to having my first child. And I felt, I'm a therapist. I've done a lot of work. I've been to a lot of therapy in my life. And I thought, like, wow, okay, I got this childhood thing. I got this baby thing. And it really pulled a rug out from under me. I felt completely alone and isolated and depressed and confused and overwhelmed. And at times I thought maybe I made a mistake. Like, I'm supposed to feel all that like good stuff now, and I don't. Like, what the heck is going on? So to me, I just want the women that are listening to know that it gets so much easier and it gets so much better. And there are ways in which you start to find yourself again. There are ways that you start to move your body again. You start to have conversations. You start to see your friends again. Your life starts to return back to what I like to call the new normal, because it won't go back to the old normal because it's different now. You have a child. But it doesn't mean that you are lost as an individual. And this is such a rich and potent time to grow, to expand, to stand in your power and your truth, and to have boundaries. And there is nothing that makes a mama bear more defiant to stand in her boundaries than messing with her child. So to me, there are a lot of opportunities for growth that will surprise you, that will wow you, that will at times knock you onto the floor. And we are all going through it together. You are not alone in that.
Yeah, I love what you just shared. And it's just to offer that hope and to normalize where you are. And another piece that I think is so important is to be able to name the things or express the feelings that are unnameable or unexpressible, in the sense that, when you say those words, maybe I shouldn't have done this. Maybe I'm not supposed to be a mom. Maybe I made a mistake. Those are the things that we don't say out loud because they sound so awful.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
I feel that that's part of this process, is finding that safe person to be able to share these shadow aspects that, we carry inside because of shame.
Yes. And I want to say one more thing about that too. For the moms that maybe had a difficult, unempowered first birth experience, it can be completely different the second time around. And it was for me. And I found my voice. I chose care providers who would listen to me. I shared with them in depth my experience the first time around and what was a problem for me. I let them know what I expected from them and how I wanted to feel in this birth experience. And I really felt, to me, it completely course corrected the first experience for me and really made me feel so proud and so honored and just so happy that I was able to really go there and be vulnerable, to really ask for a different journey and to really kind of take it into my own hands a little bit more.
Yeah, that's wonderful to hear, just to know that one experience that was perhaps traumatic or awful is not necessarily something to kind of use as a predictor for future experiences, that it can be completely different.
Right, exactly.
So you have a wonderful podcast that you have launched last year. If you can share a little bit about that, Melissa, and what listeners can expect, and also a little bit about the work you do and how they can get in touch with you.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I'll start with the work about me. I'm a psychotherapist. As mentioned, I have a private practice in New York City in Midtown. And then my website for that is www.embracingjoy.com. I'm also on Facebook and Twitter, so people are more than welcome to contact me through the website or however else they wish. And then with my two co-founders, Sophie and Claire, we created Honest Mamas. And the website for that is www.honestmamas.com. Again, we're on Twitter and Facebook and all the social media platforms as well. And the podcast that we do through Honest Mamas, which you can actually find at honestmamas.com/podcast, we discuss all aspects of the motherhood journey. I love our podcast. I love the guests we have on. We talk about everything from communication issues with partners to having to use a surrogate to carry a baby, to mindfulness, we talk about it all. Anything that you can imagine going through on this journey, we try to cover. And we have a great mix between, women that are going through this personal share stories and experts in the field. So it's really been a lot of fun, and it's been really, really great.
And it's an incredible resource. I encourage our listeners to check out Honest Mamas, and you will find something in there, more than one thing, that will be, illuminating and inspiring and helpful, either for yourself or another woman in your life who is experiencing motherhood and struggling with some aspect of it. Melissa, I know you also have put together a really fabulous gift for our listeners. So could you share a little bit about their options? Because they actually can choose from two.
Yes. So we have two awesome offerings right now. If you go to honestmamas.com, scroll down the main page on the right-hand side, we have two free offerings. The first would be the 10 tips for repairing with your partner. And what that means is you get into an argument, you don't know what the heck to do, you don't know how to make it better, you don't know how to move through it. Download that one and it'll help you. The second one is an ebook, which is the top 5 psychological challenges of pregnancy, which is also a really not only beautiful to look at, but also really informative piece that I think will help a lot of your listeners as well.
Thank you so much for offering both of those to our listeners, and we will make sure that the information about Melissa's gifts are in the show notes, along with links to her website and her social media platforms, so that, if they would like to follow you, learn more about you, work with you, they can find you.
Wonderful.
Melissa, thank you so much for spending this time with me on a Saturday and having this really important and meaningful conversation that I think so many moms will benefit from.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Take care. Thanks so much for listening to the Women in Depth podcast. I hope it brings you a deeper understanding of yourself and others, and that you found some insights that illuminated and inspired. You can follow Women in Depth on Facebook and YouTube, and if you haven't yet, please subscribe on iTunes and leave a review. And finally, if you enjoy Women in Depth, please share with a friend. Again, thank you so much for listening, and see you next time.